everyone, hello from sometimes sunny southern Sweden on the island of Hisingen, one of the high points here. I have Pexa and Isa over there, my dogs with me, just hiked up here across from a rock quarry. Had a little musing today. Somebody was asking me about Ragnarok on one of my YouTube videos that I talked about possible Christian influence on the concept of as Armageddon, the prevalence of concept of Ragnarok as Armageddon. So first thing I wanted to add was something towards that, which is, it seems no coincidence that Surt is a fire god of the south, right? The south is, of course, more warm geographically than Scandinavia, so it makes sense just from the south. But also, if you look into a little bit more alliteration of it, the Abrahamic faiths that came from the Middle East brought fire and destruction to people over here. Now that's just my own reading into it. It might not be significant. As it is, there's geographic parallels with heat from the south. So now we'll go into a couple other musings, and these are just thoughts I've had. They have, I mean, of course I've pulled them out of the writings, but there's no necessary historical precedence. Well, there is historical precedence, but there is, I'm not saying these things are facts. I'm just looking at them. First is Vidar and Vali. So all the gods have really survived Ragnarok, really. And Vidar and Vali are both, I mean, they're paired, of course. Most of the gods that survived are paired, but they're both gods of vengeance. And Vidar would get vengeance on his father's killer, Fenrir, by collecting leather scraps, and putting them under his right foot, putting his right foot on the bottom jaw of Fenrir, hand on top, and ripping his jaws of thunder after Fenrir devours Odin. And it is said that he is silent and stoic before that, even though years go by before that foretold act. Now the other god to look at there is another son of Odin, Vali. Vali was born to put that, and immediately, you know, had strength within a day and all these other things that you can read in the sagas. But he would not wash nor comb his hair until he put Baldur's foe upon a funeral pyre. Now both of those things seem to have a coincidence, you know, one being silent before vengeance. It foretells like a vow of silence or some type of vow before an act of vengeance, and the same is of Vali with his not combing or washing his hair. Now there is historical precedent from that. I believe it is in, yes, chapter 31 of Tacitus Germania. They talk about the tribe, the Chatti. And the Chatti do not shave nor groom in life the young man until slaying an enemy. So it shows that there are historical precedences to explain why this exists in the myths. And it is also interesting, and I don't have the time now, but I'm sure some of you know this, there are a lot of parallels to this and citations to this in other Proto-Indo-European practices and cosmologies. It's kind of interesting to see that, you know, the Chatti were written about in the 1st century AD, and of course this was the other two vengeance solemn oaths, you could say, of silence, and of course not grooming existed all the way into post 1000 when they were written down in the sagas. So it's kind of interesting, and it proves it exists in the cultural continuum of the Germanic tribes from way before their interpolation with Christianity, which brings up another interesting idea that maybe that is more Germanic than some of the other concepts talked about in the story of Ragnarok. From there, I want to look at some of the other gods that survived, right? Other pairs. So you have Magni and Modi, brave and strong, two of Thor's children. And this brings me to another interesting concept, is that when you look at what was before Ragnarok and what is after Ragnarok, before seemed to be nature deities, definitely nature deities with the Vanir, and then moving to sky deities with upper level thought and cognition with the Azir, but they were still natural phenomena, and the giants are natural phenomena. And the way I break it down is I look at the Vanir and the Azir, the gods were the phenomena that were productive, whereas the giants were usually the more destructive phenomena, fire and ice and things like that, whereas rain and tides and all that became known as gods. So it's interesting to kind of look at that and extrapolate from that the concept of what is good, what is evil, what was neutral, what was morally ambiguous in the world of the Germanic people, because of course the Germanic tribes had no moral compass, as in everything was situational and they were morally ambiguous. So by saying Magni and Modi, the two sons of Thor, what remains after him, you're looking at brave and strong. this removes the natural phenomena of Thor. That is the thunder and the lightning and the chaos, or not chaos, but the randomness that exists in the phenomena, and the fear and the awe-inspiring terribleness of his furiosity. And this kind of shows that maybe Ragnarok was a symbolic break with the phenomenon, natural phenomenon deities, into a world where man now had modern philosophy and didn't need to explain the deities of phenomena, and now only needed the human characteristics that phenomena inspired. So by taking away the natural phenomena within Thor, what is left? The human characteristics of him being brave and strong, and therefore his sons. That's an interesting concept. And you can look at the parallels between Magni and Vali, as they both achieved feats when they were boys. And as Magni, I talked about what Vali did. Magni lifted, a piece of a giant, I think his thumb or his heel or something, that had fallen across Thor's neck when he was only 3 years old, and no one else could. So it's interesting to see, you remove the natural phenomena, things the ancients couldn't explain, you're left with just what man could explain. Now, Ullr also supposedly survived at Ragnarok, but there's not really that much attestations of it. So what you can see is that different things that are kennings for Ullr, like Ullr's shield would be, Ullr's ship, would be a kenning for a shield. Now, humankind still needed shields far after their use of explaining the gods as fire deities might have waned. And he was also used to swear oaths at least 3 or 4 times in ancient historical writings, and man still needed to swear oaths. They still needed to have fealty and loyalty to each other. You could not exist in a harsh environment like this without having loyalty towards one another. That's why you talk about in Christianity, it's always turn the other cheek. It's because they lived in places where man was able to thrive, where it was closer to what man evolved to inhabit, and life was easy, so there was a large population, so you were better in life to turn the other cheek, as opposed to be forthright and proud. Up here, if you met someone who was a jerk, it'd be better maybe to kill them. Just watching the dogs, as that one person could do so much harm because it was so hard to live up here that everybody had to pull their weight. You didn't want to be meek and quiet, because meek and quiet would make you be weak, and it might be advantageous to someone else to take you over. So that's why fidelity and fealty were so important up here. And so with Tyr being gone, the god of oaths, and also how I've talked about before, he lost his hand, and maybe that was a monotheistic way to create sacrilege amongst the Norse pagans. To throw the god of oaths down the lowest it can be as an oathbreaker, you still needed oaths, and therefore Ullr could have fulfilled that role. Of course it's just a postulation, but we always need protection in a post-natural phenomena world, and Ullr still provides that with his ship kenning. So then you can look at 2 other gods, Hodr and Baldur, right? Hodr and Baldur, Hud and Baldur, right? The twin gods, again, paired light and dark, because there needed to be balance of light and dark again in this world, right? I think I lost some balance. I take my glasses off and then the sun starts to come out. But the light and balance restored from the afterlife, from Hell's Hall, from Ludnir, where Baldur was an honored guest, sat at the head of the table. They came back to restore the balance of light and dark on this earth. And of course, Solbjörn and Dornr, that shined at least as beautiful as her, to continuation of the sun. And then you can look at the 2 humans that survived, Lif and Lifthrasir, the one meaning life, and the other one literally being life animated. So you have life, right? But what is life? Trees are alive. But then you need animation to have the animal portent of life are moving. So it's kind of interesting how everything's twinned and paired, and they're all bringing back different aspects in a duality that exists or has to exist within nature. And where did the 2 humans live, right? In Hodmim's Hult, right? And what could that be? Well, Hod is very, very similar to Norse head. Of course, Mim means Mimir. Hult means wood. Today, even in English, it means that. So it's not really hard to see the roots of the word. They're talking about Yggdrasil. People have postulated that before. But you see that there are several parallels with these 2 humans. Of course, there's Ask and Embla, these original 2 humans. But then there's also symbolic references in Bavarian folklore. Bavarians were some of the first Germanic tribes converted, besides the Visigoths, were the first, I guess, Germanic tribes that were converted that had a modern kingdom that existed to today, or an ancient kingdom that existed to become a modern kingdom. And they have stories of a man surviving in the forest and coming to life. And even the story of Rumpelstiltskin in America mirrors that, as it's a Dutch folklore transposed onto the North American continent. Now back to Ask and Embla. The forerunners lived from the south here. What are you guys doing over there? I think they're getting a little fed up, so I'll make this quick. But they were given life by Odin, Vili, and Ve. And who is Vili? It's another name for Honir. And Honir, or Vili, gave reason to man, right? Odin gave them breath, and then they were given reason. So it's kind of interesting that Odin, Vili, and Ve are looked at as a triad of gods, necessary brothers, kind of the same emanation as one, and depending on where you can read, and I'll let you read more up on that because it's just too much to say, but if you look, they say that Odin gave inspiration, Vili cognition, and Ve numen, or the spiritual side. And it's kind of interesting that the two, Odin and Ve, die, but Vili survives. And what is he? Cognition. So you take away the divine inspiration or the magical side of things. You take away the spiritual side of things, and what are you left with? Cognition. That is man's philosophy today. Now, did that foretell the world we're living in today? Or was that them attempting to explain how they no longer need the spiritual superstition of their ancestors and can now live in a world based on logic as we live today? So, you know, and in the stories of Ragnarok, Honir, the one who gave reason to man and the ability to have logic, which is what brought us into this new scientific age that we live in now, when we finally shed monotheism for the most part, he is said to choose the wood for the divination post Ragnarok, which shows man's reliance on cognition over his former reliance on spiritual superstitions. So those are just things I was thinking about today. Ask me any questions. I by no means say this is true. I'm just theorizing and postulating upon different interpretations that exist within the sagas of Ragnarok. So, as always, from sunny southern Sweden, with Pexa and Isa, I wish you well on your own Nordic journeys, my friends.